Welcome into After Carmen, the official postgame show of 11 Warriors. I'm Dan Hope, joined by Andy Anders. Ohio State's undefeated season coming to an end tonight as the Buckeyes, after a 12-0 regular season, suffering their first loss of the year here in Indianapolis at the Big Ten Championship game, 13-10 loss to the Hoosiers. Good news for the Buckeyes is they're still going to be in the college football playoff. They're very, very likely still going to have a first-round bye. Bad news is they will not be able to accomplish all three of their major goals this year, because while they were able to beat Michigan, ending their 5-year drought against the Wolverines last week, they were not able to end their drought in the Big Ten Championship game here this week, as Indiana, the number 2 team in the country coming into this game, proves to be the number 1 team in the country, at least on this night. The Hoosiers are going to be the number 1 seed in the college football playoff. Ohio State going to be somewhere between the number 2 and number 4 seed in the college football playoff after losing here tonight to Indiana on a night where, quite frankly, Ohio State's offense just didn't get the job done.
Yeah, there was multiple areas to critique from this performance for the offense, and I think about the play calling in this one was certainly head-scratching at times. I mean, Julian saying on what ended up being Ohio State's final real offensive possession, I mean, they got the ball back with 18 seconds left, but obviously didn't do a whole lot with it in that scenario. Julian Saya makes an incredible play, scrambling out of the pocket on the run, finds Carnell Tate along the sideline. It's a great catch. They're moving down the field with the quick passing game, too, doing some of those things. You come out in I formation on first down in the red zone. There was one sequence where Ohio State had a really nice chunk run with Bo Jackson. Good play, and then the very next play they run the exact same play, and Indiana stops it for a loss. There were a lot of little play calling things like that. A lot of play action tonight. I thought it was kind of weird how much the play action was used in this game from Ohio State. And then just execution beyond that, right? Offensive line did not have a good day today, and they came off their best day of the year at Michigan, right? This game, not up to standard for the offensive line. The pressure was in Sayan's face a lot in this game. He didn't have proper time to throw the ball. Indiana, give credit to him. I mean, one of the best defensive lines in the country. Probably top 3 defensive line in the country. They really showed that tonight. I thought that would be the case coming into this game, of the clash in the trenches was going to settle a lot of things, and I think it did for Ohio State, not being able to finish drives in the red zone. Julian Sayan's knee goes down half a yard short on a 4th and 1. You have several plays like that, too, where it's just one little break, one little block. Bo Jackson not getting taken down by a shoelace when he would have had him laid open to the end zone. Not to criticize Bo too much, because he played great today. But, yeah, the Ohio State offense, just that one execution, that one block, that one whatever it might be, short on a lot of plays tonight.
Before we continue, I want to give a shout-out to our sponsor, First Bank of Central Ohio, the official bank of 11 Warriors. From game day to workday, First Bank of Central Ohio is in your corner. Visit them at fbcentralohio.com. I think for me, Andy, it's kind of been there all year. The red zone has been an area that's been not Ohio State's strength offensively, and I think it had gotten better over the course of a year. We kind of saw it early in the season. You look for the last couple of months, the stats in the red zone have been pretty good, but tonight it really came home to roost. 4 trips to the red zone, only 1 touchdown. Jaden Fielding, unfortunately, much like last year's game against Michigan, he's going to take a lot of hate for what happened tonight, because with a chance to tie the game in the red zone, he shanks a field goal wide left from 27 yards out. Ultimately, those 3 points make all the difference in this one. But much like we talked about after last year's Michigan game, you can't put it all on Jaden Fielding, because they should not have been in that position. The fact of the matter is, again, 4 trips to the red zone, 1 touchdown. Ohio State did not finish drives. They did not find enough ways to get the ball into Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate's hands. Obviously we did see early in the game a great play by Julian Sayan, long developing play, is able to get the ball to Carnell Tate for a touchdown. But after that, we really didn't see any plays go to their 2 best players on offense when they were in that red area of the field. And so at the end of the day, Ohio State's inability to finish drives offensively is what cost the Buckeyes in this game. And it really does, in many ways, going right down to the exact same final score, does feel like a similar script to that game against Michigan last year. Now, the big key difference is this was not an unranked Michigan team that Ohio State was a heavy favorite again. This is an Indiana team that's really, really good. I mean, right now, Indiana is the best football team in the country, and I think maybe until tonight it was hard for people to accept that. This Indiana team is really, really good. If Ohio State's going to win a national championship, good chance they're going to have to go through this team again, because this team is really, really good, and I think that should be said. But I also think that this game clearly exposed some issues for Ohio State, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, that they're going to have to get fixed over the next few weeks if they are going to make another championship run. The good news is we saw them do this last year. Last year, again, a 13-10 loss. The offense has a terrible performance, and then they come back in the college football playoff, look like the team they were supposed to look like all year, and they go win a national title. So I think we've seen more than enough from this team in the first 12 games of the year, at least from my vantage point, to still feel like this team is very capable of going on another run like they did last year. But I also think that, particularly after last week's game, getting the Michigan monkey off the back, there was probably some feeling around the Ohio State fan base, maybe even within the team, of, nobody should be able to beat us. Like, they had been so dominant 11 games in a row by 18-plus points that it started to feel like nobody can beat this team. And we saw tonight that that's not the case, that this team is beatable. And I think, you had to wonder, at least I wondered coming into this game, about the possibility of a letdown. I mean, that Michigan game had been such a big cloud over this program for the last 4 years. You finally achieved that goal. Then you have a week where you can't really focus fully on football because Brian Hartline gets the head coaching job at USF. You've got all this recruiting drama with Chris Henry Jr. And maybe, particularly on the offensive side of the ball with Brian Hartline dealing with that, maybe the focus wasn't quite as there. Ryan Day's talked so much about keep the routine the routine. We know for a fact, not to their fault, just the reality of the situation in college football calendar, the routine couldn't have been entirely the same this week, and maybe that came back to bite them here against a top 2 team in the country.
Yeah, you mentioned exposing flaws with this team, and that's what Luke Montgomery said after the game. And I always credit players who are willing to come out, face the media after a loss. It's not easy. A lot of these guys were very gracious after this game. Luke Montgomery came out and said the flaws have always been there, and tonight they got exposed, something along those lines. I'm not quoting exactly, but that is the case for this team when you talk about the red zone, when you talk about the run game, when you talk about certain lapses on the offensive line, and the pass protection was, again, not that good tonight. I think Indiana's a great team, and again, probably the number 1 team in the country. They proved that tonight. I do think Ohio State also looks back and says there were mistakes that cost us this game. As a team, they look back, they do that. I think they shot themselves in the foot several times. I'm going to be very, very interested to see and hear from Ryan Day, get a feel for what the play calling, what the offensive coordinating situation is going to look like moving forward, because it wasn't there tonight. Like, this was one of the worst game plans they've had all year. And to me, Ryan seemed to take a little more control back because there was more time for him to do that, and some of the responsibilities of having to be a program CEO are off the table a little bit when you get to the playoff and classes, you start to go on winter break and early signing day isn't happening actively. It allows him to be a little more involved in the room in the offensive game planning, and I think that's going to be the case again. Just how much does he after this? Like, how involved is Brian Hartline going to be in play calling? How much was he involved this game? I don't know if his responsibilities were scaled back at all or if that was just his game plan out there. I think that's a question to ask and a good question to look for going forward for this team, it's going to be very important to address. The other thing I'll say is we've talked about the methodical pace all season. Ohio State didn't run a lot of plays in this game. I don't have the final number, but it wasn't a lot. And this is where the methodical pace hurts you, is when you can't finish in the red zone, when you can't be efficient, when you can't execute at the level you want to execute. Now the game is shortened, and you've handed your opponent a better chance to beat you in a shortened game. So I think there's going to be a lot of motivation in this locker room to do what they did last year, to get back and to play Indiana again. But the chance at the first Big Ten championship in 5 years, the chance at a potential perfect season, those things hurt to lose from this one.
It's hard to do those things. It doesn't happen very often. And so the chance is still there for this to be, one of the great seasons in Ohio State history. So, I think this team will regroup. I think this team knows that it still has that national championship potential, and I still expect this team to make a great run at it. But, it's just, and it's one of those things, it could be a good thing for this team, much like the Michigan game was last year. Because the one thing we really didn't know about this team all year long was how were they going to respond when they got punched in the mouth. Mm-hmm. And we saw it tonight. They didn't respond very well. But again, same thing happened last year against Michigan, and they bounced back from it. So I think going into the playoff, I do think the silver lining is I think it does help them to have this experience, a game that they can learn from, a game where they did get some things exposed that they now have to improve on, a game where they finally faced adversity for the first time really all year, and it didn't go the way that they wanted it to go. It's certainly very disappointing to see, second half they don't score a single point. And I think it was evident to me, we've seen this team play so loose, so confident. I don't think we saw that same team tonight.
It felt very tight.
I think, to me, the moment that really felt that was at the end of the first half, when Ohio State really didn't push the pace at all. They seemed content to just kind of take a 10-6 lead into halftime, and they seemed more concerned about the possibility of giving Indiana the ball back and Indiana taking the lead than they did about putting their foot down on the pedal and trying to go take a 2-score lead into halftime. I think when I saw that was the first point where you kind of go like, it feels like they're not super confident in their offense right now. And you thought, nope, you felt like that first drive coming out of halftime was going to be big. And it's like maybe, if they come back out, hair on fire, all right, like you're going to be feeling good. Like they put that behind them. When they go out first drive, have to punt, then you kind of get that feeling of, maybe it's not their night, or at the least, they were going to really have to grind out a tough one here, and they just weren't able to do that. And so Ohio State will not be the number 1 seed in the college football playoff, but I still fully expect them to be a top 4 seed. We won't know tomorrow who exactly they will be playing in the first round, or in the quarterfinals, but we will know what seed they will be, what bowl they will be going to, and a pair of teams that will be playing each other in the first round, one of which Ohio State will be playing in the quarterfinals. And so we will have a lot more coverage to come on 11warriors.com, both from this Big Ten championship game and looking ahead to the college football playoff. Ryan Day will have a press conference in the 1 p.m. hour on Sunday, and so we have to get back to Columbus. We will be there for that, and we'll have a lot more coverage to come on 11warriors.com. But for now, he's Andy Anders. I'm Dan Hope. This has been After Carmen.